We're excited. We actually, I'll let Mamie run around for a second. I know she's going to have fun. So we came in from Wisconsin last night en route to Northwest Iowa, but we stopped in Dyersville, Iowa, and we did an event at the Field of Dreams baseball complex. So he was taking BP out there. Madison was able to hit. Mamie hit off the tee. They hit off the pitch balls. Now Casey got up to bat too, and she's a very good athlete. I mean, like you see her hit golf balls. She's an equestrian, all this stuff. So I'm pitching to her, and she's missing and missing and missing.
Zip on your fastball.
Well, but she's like, what am I doing wrong? I'm like, you just got to watch the ball. And I was like, hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in sports. And so we got it. And then so she started cracking some as well. But when you see something as a kid growing up in the 1980s, a movie, and you see it, and then to be there was really, really special. So we were happy to have the family there. And then we got into Northwest Iowa last night. So we're happy to be with you. So thanks for the kids and Casey for coming along, and we appreciate it. Yep. So I don't think I need to tell you that we've got a country that's in decline. But I do have to tell you that decline's not inevitable. That decline is a choice. It's a choice that we are going to make as Americans over these next 18 months. Are we going to continue to do what's put us in this mess, or are we going to reverse course and reverse the decline and restore this country to the greatness that it deserves? And in order to get there, we have to send Joe Biden back to his basement in Delaware where he belongs. If you look at what's going on in this country, we have a situation where families that are working hard, playing by the rules, doing everything right, simply raising their family is becoming cost prohibitive. Forget about affording a new house, forget about affording a new car, and grocery bills have doubled in the last few years. Meanwhile, people in Washington, D.C. have never done better. Right now, 5 of the 8 wealthiest counties in our entire country are suburbs of Washington, D.C. Are they producing much of anything beneficial? I know they're producing a lot of debt. I know they're producing a lot of hot air, but the policies that make it more difficult for American families are benefiting the people who are politically connected. And Bidenomics is basically, you have a lower standard of living so he can pursue the left's ideological agenda. And when I become president, we are going to reverse Bidenomics. We are going to take all the executive orders, all the bureaucracy and regulation he's put on, and we're going to throw it into the trash can on day one. It's going to be gone. This problem that we have with the affordability and the groceries and everything, that was created by government policy. It was created starting with the COVID lockdowns when they stopped the economy. Then they pumped trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in borrowed and printed money into the economy. They paid people not to work. They did a lot of other things. Look, if you could just run your household where you could just keep putting stuff on the credit card and there was never anybody that had to pay the bill, yeah, that would be nice, right? But we know that's not how the world works. So who is paying the bill are Americans. So this Congress and the Federal Reserve and everybody up there, the lot of them, they have created the problems that we're dealing with. And so as president, I am not going to let the Congress spend us into oblivion any longer. We're going to fight back against the big spenders. If they put a bill on my desk that is plunging your kids and grandkids into further debt and further economic difficulty, I'll veto it and send it back to them. That's what I've done in the state of Florida. You know, in Florida, I've vetoed billions of dollars in wasteful spending. We've run budget surpluses every year. Since I've been governor in 2019, we've actually paid down almost 25% of our state's total debt. that we've accumulated throughout the entire history of the state of Florida. So don't tell me that it can't be done. You just got to be willing to lead, and you've got to be willing to make good decisions. But this song that's come out that we were asked about in the debate really talks about how the people that are in power benefit from policies that hurt the rest of Americans. And so you do have these rich men north of Richmond who have done very well plunging this country into debt. That's going to stop on January 20th, 2025 when I take office. We also have to understand Biden's waging a war on American energy. That is bad for families. It's bad for the economy. It's bad for businesses. So we are going to have all of our domestic energy production is going to be wide open. We want to produce, we want to be energy dominant in this country, and that includes oil, gas, biofuels like here in the Midwest, but we're not going to force people to buy electric vehicles. I mean, I talk to some of these farmers, they're like, they're going to make me use electric farm equipment. Are you serious that we're going to do that? So that will all end when I become president. When we're energy dominant, that's good for our national security. It's not good for Iran. It's not good for Russia. It's not good for China. Biden's policies benefit Russia, Iran, Venezuela, and China. Why would we want to do that? So from an economic perspective, it's a no-brainer. It will help reduce the inflation that we're seeing right now, and we'll get that done. That'll be a day one thing, stroke of the pen, and we'll be off to the races, and that's going to make a difference for our country. You know, the other thing that I think about when I look at kind of how do you reverse the decline of the country, there's certain things we can do on day one that will have a big impact. There's certain things that we're going to have to make some adjustments to in terms of how we do some of this, and one of those is on the issue of education. Education needs to be about teaching people things that matter, not trying to indoctrinate them into some type of political agenda or ideology. And that's true not just in K through 12, that's also true in higher education. And particularly when you look at higher education, you do not need to get a 4-year degree from a traditional brick and ivy university to be successful. You can, it's good for many, it was good for me, but we've also graduated a generation of students deep into debt with degrees in things like zombie studies. How is that going to do anything for you? And then people that went a vocational route were frowned upon as if somehow, what, you're not as good as somebody who went to a 4-year college? So there are different pathways, and if we're in Florida, we have vocational education in middle school now. We credential people at a high school in welding, aviation mechanics, all these important things. We've expanded the number of truck drivers that we're producing from 600 to 3,500. Those are really good jobs. Those make a difference, and it's also better for our economy. So we're going to make that shift nationally that we've done in Florida. Look, you taxpayers, a truck driver should not have to pay off the student loan of somebody that got a degree in zombie studies. That is not fair, it's not right, and we're not going to do it. You know, but I also think the universities have benefited from all this loan money. They end up increasing their bureaucracy, they have more DEI, they have more of these things. So we're going to make the universities responsible for the debt. So if you graduate a student, they pay it back, great. If they don't, you're going to be on the hook, not the American taxpayer. You know what's going to happen? You're going to see a lot less zombie studies programs, and you're going to see programs that are going to make an impact. So it's good for the economy. It's good for student achievement. It's not going to be as good for universities, but you know what? We've let them run ragged for far too long, and we need to start making some changes. We also have to get the indoctrination out of these schools. And Iowa's done a great job. In Florida, we've done a great job. We eliminated critical race theory in our K through 12 schools. We fought Disney to keep transgender ideology out of our K through 12 schools. Can you imagine? I mean, if we were here even 5 years ago, and someone suggested to you that there were schools that were telling kindergartners, you know, you may be born in the wrong body or that your gender is a choice, I don't think we would have believed it even 5 years ago, certainly not 10 years ago. And yet that stuff is going on. They are trying to impose an agenda on very young kids. So we had a situation in Florida where we didn't want to see that. I don't think it had really happened to the extent it's happened in some of the liberal states, but it was obvious that that's where it was going. And we had to go up against a company in Florida that some of you may have heard of in Central Florida called Disney. And they wanted to stop our parents' rights bill, parents' rights legislation. And, it's like companies usually don't get involved in issues like that. I mean, I guess they have a right to. But this particular company in Florida carries a lot of weight. It's like the 800-pound gorilla. I don't think they've ever leaned in on a political issue and not gotten what they wanted. And so when this was pending, people said, oh, man, the governor, there's no way he's going to be able to sign the bill because he's going to earn the wrath, of the Disney empire. And you know what? That may have been true throughout most of Florida history, but, with me as governor, there's a new sheriff in town. And so I said, I am going to stand for the people of my state. I'm going to stand for the parents in my state and the children of my state. I do not subcontract out my leadership to woke corporations based in Burbank, California. And so we got that done, and we're better off as a result of it. So that needs to be the model, how Florida and Iowa's approached it, and even higher education. We're putting people in place in these universities that are taking the universities from being more about ideology and more about a classical education. The purpose of a university is not to impose a particular political worldview on the students. It's to prepare them to think for themselves and be citizens of our republic. And that's what we're doing in Florida, and it's making a big difference. So we're going to do similar things across the United States of America to make a big difference. I was proud to be able to, at that debate, muscle in issues that maybe the moderators didn't necessarily want to talk about. And one of those issues was the issue of our southern border. I'm going to be the president that finally puts this issue to bed. We are going to solve the problem. No more slogans, no more rhetoric, no more empty promises. We're going to get it done. And that means on day one, we're going to declare it to be a national emergency. We're going to mobilize all available resources, including the U.S. military, to stop the invasion, to make sure, yes, we're going to build the border wall, but we're going to lean in against the Mexican drug cartels because they are killing tens of thousands of our fellow citizens every year with virtually no pushback. They have more control over what's going on at our southern border than our own U.S. government does, and that is an absolute disgrace. And it's something that people will say, and so a lot of the elite media will say, oh, it's a border, because we've done things in Florida. I've sent people to the southern border to help Texas, our National Guard and our Florida law enforcement. We transported illegals, aliens, to Martha's Vineyard and did that. And, and Mito's like, oh, well, you're not a border state. Well, actually, we're a maritime state, so I have boats working with the Coast Guard. We're stopping boats from Haiti and other places where they're coming illegally and putting them back, and it's effective when you're willing to do that. So, but people say, oh, well, why do you care? Like, you're not on the border. Biden has made every community in this country a border community because the fentanyl is flowing every place in this country. And I think about my kids, 6, 5, and 3, and they're too young to where they're going out and doing their own thing. But from a parent's perspective, you now have to be in a situation, if you have teenage kids or college-age kids, they can go out and be somewhere, and they can take like a pill thinking it's like a Xanax or something. And if that's laced with fentanyl, they could die right there on the spot. That's how dangerous this stuff is. I've met a bunch of these mothers. They're called angel mothers. Mothers who have lost a child to fentanyl overdose. And it's almost always where the child was not trying to take fentanyl, thought that they were taking something else that had been laced, and that's all she wrote at that point. And when you have mothers that are thinking, okay, if the government would have done something about this, then their kids would still be with us. So how could we be so neglectful and dismissive as a country of all the damage that is being done? So what I've said and pledged is we are going to treat the drug cartels like foreign terrorist organizations because they are killing more Americans than any terrorist organization, including Al-Qaeda, have ever been managed to do. So that means we're going to use lethal force against the Mexican drug cartels. When they're coming across the border, with fentanyl in their backpacks, and you've seen the videos and pictures. Sometimes they're armed, sometimes they have a backpack with the drugs in it. Our border's wide open. We do have pieces of a border wall, but it's mostly wide open. But with the places where there are the wall, they actually cut through the wall, and they just come right in. When I'm president, if they are doing things like that and breaking into our country with fentanyl that's going to kill our citizens, we're going to shoot them stone cold dead. They are going to be done, and we are not going to put up with this anymore. We're also going to bring a reckoning about the government's disastrous COVID-19 policies, because those lockdown policies were destructive. The mandates violated people's freedoms. It's caused huge problems in our economy, our labor force. It's driven a lot of people into drug and substance abuse, despair and depression, and yet nobody is taking responsibility for doing any of this. In fact, you're now seeing in certain pockets of the country a move to reimpose things like mask mandates. Like, we know this didn't work, and yet they're trying to do it again. They won't do it in Florida because we banned any type of mandate, so you're not permitted to do it. You have a civil right in the state of Florida to breathe clean air without having a piece of cloth forced on your face. And that's true whether it's your business, whether it's the local government, state government. You make those decisions yourself. But they're trying to do it, and so you're starting to see some of this whipped up. They're trying to do it. I can tell you, when I'm president, we are going to bring a reckoning. That's Fauci, the CDC, NIH, all these organizations. We're going to hold them accountable, because if we don't, they are going to get away with it. They will try to do it again, and we can never let this happen to our country ever again. And with me as president, you won't have to worry about that. Cody, mentioned some of the things we've done in Florida, and it got me thinking about one of the issues that really doesn't get talked about very much, certainly with kind of the national media dialogue. It certainly wasn't brought up at the debate the other night. But if you think about what makes us unique as Americans, it's the idea that our rights are not gifts from government. They are endowed to us by Almighty God. And that means you have the right, God-given right, to practice your religious faith. And if you look what's happened through this country in recent years, religious liberty is under attack. If you're a Christian, a practicing Christian, there are places in our society where you can't even live your faith without coming in face of roadblocks. Coach Kennedy, if you know the story of Coach Kennedy in Washington State, he was a high school football coach. After the games, he would go to midfield and he would kneel and say a prayer. And a lot of the players would go and do it with him. No one was forced to do it. He did it. He lost his job because he said a prayer at midfield in a high school football game. And he sued to get it back. He went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and he did win a 6-3 decision, reinstating him and saying that they violated his religious freedom. And that was hailed as a victory for religious liberty. And look, it's better than if he had lost. But the fact that that case is even getting to the Supreme Court, the fact that we're even having to discuss this, shows you that religious liberty in this country is not secure. And the reason is the left is trying to impose a competing religion on society. No, it's not Christianity or traditional faith. It's basically the religion of leftism. They want leftism to dominate our society. They think you, as a Christian or an Orthodox Jew or whatever you are, that you can practice your faith up to the point that it conflicts with their agenda. That's why they would have somebody who provides services that they could be forced to compel a message that they disagree with and that violates their faith. They think you have to bow down to service their agenda. And that takes us back to before this country was founded. In terms of religious freedom, our founding fathers knew that that didn't work. They knew your right to practice your faith was not something that political elites would control and tell you you have certain amount of rights or not enough rights. They knew that this was a natural right. And we're not going to go back to the era prior to our Constitution, because that would really be squandering one of the greatest heritages that we have had as Americans. George Washington, when he was newly sworn in, probably about a year into his term, he wrote a letter to the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island, because the rabbi there had written him a letter thanking him that they were able to practice their faith freely in America. And Washington wrote back and he said, how great is it that you're in America, you're able to practice your religion, not at the courtesy of what elites say you're allowed to do, but as an inherent natural right that's been endowed to you by our Creator. And that is our heritage of religious liberty. This battle has not been won. This is a very important battle, but as President of the United States, I will lead the effort to restore full religious liberty in the United States of America. One of the things that's bugged me about some of the things happening in our country, just as a veteran, I'm somebody that served. I served after 9/11. I served in Iraq. I was assigned, attached to U.S. Navy SEALs. We were in places like Fallujah and Ramadi, which, at that time, was not exactly the Four Seasons. And, it's important. It was important missions that were going on. You learn certain things about, I think, leadership. You learn about putting mission first. There are people from all walks of life. People had all different things going on in their personal lives. Some people had certain views or agendas, but you check it all at the door. You check it all at the door because people have got to come together and focus on accomplishing the mission. Because if you don't do that, people die. And you learn very clearly how that functions. So that's kind of how I approach things as governor. That's how I approach things as president. It's not going to be about me. It's not going to be about my issues. It's not going to be about things from the past. My energy is going to be directed to improving your lives and helping your future. And that's the only way we're going to be able to get this stuff done. So I learned that, and I think that focus and discipline is part of the reason we've been able to do so much in the state of Florida. Now, as a veteran, I have veterans coming up to me nowadays saying, I don't know that I'd want my kids or grandkids serving in today's military. Why? Because the military is indulging in social experimentation. They're indulging political agendas. They're doing woke ideology, and that has caused recruiting to plummet. It's driven off a lot of great warriors, and it's not something that you're going to be successful in if you're not focusing on mission first. So as president, on day one, we're going to take all the political, all the woke, all the nonsense from the military, we're going to rip it out, and we are going to restore our services to mission first. And when you do that, you are going to see recruiting improve. And I'm going to be happy to answer your questions in a second. I just want to, there's many other things to cover, but I just want to say none of this matters if we don't win, and none of it matters if once you win that you actually follow through and do what you said you were going to do. And I think I'm the only guy running where you can be confident we're going to win, but then even more importantly than that, what I tell you that I'm going to do, I'm not just saying it to try to curry favor or to try to get you to caucus for me, and then I get into office and somehow, people kind of forget what they said. No. When I say it, I will do it. So we're going to get all this done. And how do you know we'll do it? Because you can look what I've done in the state of Florida. When I came in, Cody mentioned our state was similar to Iowa in some respects where, it was always close elections. It was not considered like a Republican state. We won very narrowly. There were 300,000 more registered Democrats in Florida than Republicans the day I got elected in 2018 for the first time. We came in, people said, don't rock the boat, Florida's evenly divided, all this. And I'm like, look, I earned 100% of the executive power. I'm going to use it. I'm going to go and I'm going to advance a bold agenda. And you know what happens? What happens is when you do that, people respond to leadership. They want to know that you're setting the vision, you're executing, and you're delivering results. As soon as they see that, They want to be on the team. They want to be helpful. So we, over the course of my time as governor, I mean, we've done things that no other state's done. We've done things that only Iowa and Florida have done. We've done things that maybe only like 4 or 5 of our states have done. We now have banned the purchase of land by the Chinese Communist Party in the state of Florida. No farmland, no any of that. We have enacted universal school choice. Parents have the right to send their kids to the school of their choice in the state of Florida, and that can be a public school, a charter school, a private school. That's your right as a parent, and we're better off as a result of doing that. Cody mentioned we did the heartbeat bill. We also did constitutional carry to fortify Second Amendment rights. In our state, we've cut taxes by billions and billions of dollars, racked up big budget surpluses. Yes, we got the ideology out of the schools. We actually eliminated DEI from our public universities. We're going based on merit. We're not going to be divvying people up on this race or that race. We banned sanctuary cities in the state of Florida. We've obviously sent people to the southern border to help with all that, and probably had the strongest policies against illegal immigration than anybody in the country has been able to have. And we've done a lot more, but everything I promised that I would do, I delivered on. And actually, I did more than what I promised. How many times do you vote for somebody that overpromises and underdelivers? That's usually what it is, right? Well, I made bold commitments. We met those promises, and we over-delivered on our promises, and that's exactly the attitude we're going to have when we go to Washington. So how did that all shake out in the election? Taking a state that had usually been decided by one vote, by 1%, and when we won 32,000 vote margin in 18, we didn't win by just 1% or 32,000 votes. We won by 20 points over 1.5 million vote margin. It was the greatest victory that a Republican's ever had for governor in Florida history. So it can be done. Your governor and your legislature has shown you in Iowa, you can do things in this country. And when you stand for the right things and you're standing on principle, people will be attracted to want to support. We got people to vote for us who had never voted for Republicans before. You know, we were winning places like Miami and Palm Beach that no one thought a Republican could ever win. I think we can do the same thing for the country going forward, and we have no other choice. 2024 is make or break. If the Democrats win, they are going to try to pack the U.S. Supreme Court. They're going to try to eliminate the Electoral College, make Washington, D.C. a state, and eliminate voter ID in every jurisdiction in this country. And that will put us in a hole that will take a generation to recover from if we ever can do it. So the time for excuses for Republicans is over. Outside of Florida and Iowa, we've had a lot of disappointing elections over these past many cycles. We have got to get the job done in 2024. I will get the job done in 2024. And as your president, I promise you, I will not let you down. Thank you all. God bless. Be happy to take some questions. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you talked about stopping the fentanyl at the border and closing the borders. And thank you. The question that I want to ask you is, I think the Cry of Freedom did a really good job of waking up people in America to the sex trafficking of children, not only across the borders, but all over the world. And my question is, what will your administration do to shut that down? Because our children are not for sale.
100%. So the sex trafficking is abhorrent that's happening, and it's the cartels that are doing it. That's part of the reason we are going to be targeting the cartels, because they're committing crimes against humanity. So when you stop it at the border and do the cartels, that is going to shut off the trafficking at the border. Now, that's not the only place we have human trafficking, unfortunately. In Florida, we just did the strongest human smuggling legislation in the country. So if people are bringing in from the border, we have real penalties where we can get people who are smuggling. We also did a major human trafficking bill to increase penalties for people that are involved in that. And that's what we need to do. I mean, you need to put people away for a long time. And so we'll do that. And if we need more legislation from Congress for stiffer penalties, we'll definitely do that. But part of the reason, and I didn't mention it in the comments, but one of the things I'm going to do on day one is you're going to have a new director of the FBI. You're going to have a cleaned out DOJ. We are going to end the weaponization of these federal agencies, particularly FBI and DOJ. And you need to do that because as an American, you shouldn't be treated that way. I mean, parents going to school board meetings have the FBI involved. They have memos circulating that traditional Catholics are potential terrorists in this country. And you've seen major abuses that have happened. So you got to solve that just period, because you can't have that type of power being weaponized against factions in society that the elites don't like. So that we'll do that. But one good thing about ending weaponization is you actually focus law enforcement on keeping people safe like they're supposed to, because the more they care about policing misinformation or all the nonsense these agencies have gotten into in recent years, the less they're worrying about human trafficking and sex trafficking. So for us, federal law enforcement is going to be focused on protecting our communities again. That's their job, and they've departed from that mission because they become politicized and weaponized, and it's been bad for the country. Yes, ma'am.
Sort of what I thought it meant, but but recently, in the last year or two, we've seen what globalism really means, and to turn our sovereignty over to the WHO or the UN or whoever, which is what's being politically done. How are you going to stop that? I mean, that's, you have these things, but there is such an underground, a deep state that is, pushing these things.
And what's your name?
Linda Grafing.
So, Linda, the way you stop it is on day one, when I'm president, we're going to take that WHO treaty, we're going to tear it up and throw it in the trash can. It is done. And you know how I'll do that? Because in Florida, I work with my own legislature to pass legislation to say, regardless of what Biden tries to do with it, in Florida, we don't recognize that WHO treaty. We are not going to go down that road. And we've also made sure, going after a lot of the things that these international elites want to do, like ESG. So ESG, they call it environment, social governance, but all it is basically a pretext to be able to use big corporations to advance a left-wing agenda. And so they want to do things like kneecap fossil fuels, go after Second Amendment, all these other things. So in Florida, we kneecapped ESG. We eliminated any ESG considerations in our pension. We banned the use of social credit scores by financial institutions, and we ensured that Floridians had protection against discrimination by woke banks. So, and these are things, and then we've also passed legislation, and I'll ensure this dies federally, against a central bank digital currency. Have you guys heard about what this is? So central bank digital currency, what they want to do with it is they want to eliminate cryptocurrency, they want to eventually eliminate cash, and go all with this central bank digital currency. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, because they would be able to control what goes on. And so we've seen this. So the Fed has said, well, we don't have this yet. We're going to consult with Congress and the executive branch. Ideally, we'd even get authorization. So they're basically saying that they think they can do it without getting Congress's authorization. And I don't think Congress should authorize it. I'd veto it as president. But to just unilaterally do it. So in Florida, we passed legislation nullifying any attempt by the Fed to impose a central bank digital currency. We're just not going to recognize it in the state of Florida. And you will see people at places like the World Economic Forum in Davos, right? They will be very honest. It's like they got a really bad agenda, but they're honest about it. And these guys will sit there and they'll say, if you do central bank digital currency, these guys like it because they say that will be able to police what they consider to be undesirable transactions. Maybe you're buying too much fuel for their likes. Maybe you're buying too much ammunition. They don't like that. What they will use that for is to impose a social credit system on our entire economy. And you would basically be powerless to stop it. Now, I started pointing this out many months ago, and then all of a sudden, like every liberal outlet, like, Washington Post, CNN, all this stuff, DeSantis is peddling conspiracy theories. They're just, and so when they do that, that you're hitting that soft underbelly, because they wouldn't be running interference if it was really just a bogus conspiracy theory. You just shrug your shoulders and move on. No, this is what they want to do. This is what China wants to do, and China does do. So so for me, day one, CBDC dies in the United States. We'll make sure that dies. And I've said in Florida, and this will be true for the United States, that with me in charge, things like the World Economic Forum and those policies, they will be dead on arrival. Anybody? Yes.
So I'm going to turn it back a little smaller. Daycares are a huge part of the economy. If families can't work because they don't have daycare, let alone affordable, daycare shortage is huge, not only in Iowa, but also across the country. Got a plan for supporting, helping, encouraging.
What's your name?
My name's Ashley.
Okay, and thanks for the question, Ashley. First of all, I don't think it's a small thing. I mean, I think it's a big thing. Raising our kids and being able to make ends meet as families, that's a big thing. That's a huge issue. And I think what we've seen with the Bidenomics is it's almost impossible for a family to get by on a sole source of income. And, I believe people should have the right to make the decisions of how they do their families. But if somebody wants to stay home with the kids and it's not economically feasible, then they get put into a situation where they're searching for childcare and they're searching for all this. I don't know that the federal government is going to be able to solve that, because I think that to impose bureaucracy, certainly mandates would not. There may be things you can do with the tax code to make things work a little bit better. Part of it is when COVID hit, a lot of people dropped out of the labor force. Now in Florida, our labor force is more than it was then because we had the economy open. But a lot of these other places, people dropped out. So you do see places where you need more personnel in some of these. And in Florida, we've had to work to do more as well. So I think there would be more of a supporting role. But I definitely think it's a big, big issue. And I think it's one that's going to continue to be going forward.
We have time for one more question.
Yes, sir.
Hello. What would you do to basically, obviously there's jobs here in Iowa. We have artificial intelligence sometimes. What will you do to possibly save American jobs from artificial intelligence?
And what's your name?
Will.
Hey, Will. It's a great question. So this idea of artificial intelligence is rapidly becoming more and more significant. And basically, what artificial intelligence is there's massive data sets that are accumulated, and these computers can just run through it and spit out an answer. And it's something that the Chinese are using from a military perspective. And so you're going to start to see some of their systems are going to be powered by artificial intelligence. We obviously are going to have to compete with that. And we will do that because I don't want to give them an advantage on anything we're doing from a military perspective. But we have to have guardrails in society so that humanity is not displaced by machines or computers. And that's going to be something that's going to have to be very thoughtful about how you do it. But I'm not one to say that, AI should just run amok and that somehow, we shouldn't ever do anything about what are the outer limits of what's going to be acceptable use of some of these things. And some of it creates really ominous possibilities about what could happen. Some of it could just be used to hollow out communities. So we're going to use whatever is available. But the thing that we're driving for is what's best for the American people. That's who we're elected to serve. We're not elected to serve big corporations. We're not elected to serve these other interests. Is it good for the people or is it not? And if there's uses of it that are not, then appropriate guardrails can be put in place. But I think that this is something that we have this conversation a year and a half from now. There's going to be a lot of things that happen in the space of AI between now and then because there's a rapid development in what some of the things are doing. So there's a lot of potential power in it. There's a lot of potential peril. But it's also the case that a machine is just not going to be able to do everything a human being can do in a lot of these things. And so I think that there's going to be some big pitfalls just apart from how it impacts humans, that there's going to be some that are going to try to think these machines can do more than they can. And I think that there's going to be problems there. So I can take one more. Did you have one? Yep.
Yeah.
Social Security. If you're on Social Security, you get your Social Security. Don't let the Democrats say that anyone's going to take your Social Security, okay? And look, I'm the governor of Florida. I know a few people on Social Security in Florida. But I also understand the pressures. My grandmother lived till she was 91. Social Security was her sole source of income. That was it. You know, my grandfather had been a steel worker and blue collar. That was it. When you have that on a fixed income and you have inflation the way it is, the cost of living adjustment does not cover that. And so it's bad in two ways, because one, seniors have to work harder to make ends meet and make difficult choices. But then from a budgetary perspective, the program's spending more money than if you had inflation at 1 or 2%. And the 1 or 2%, the cost of living would be less, but the dollar would go further with the benefit. So Biden's really, I think, done a number on it. And Congress, you know, we have $32 trillion in debt because Congress has been spending and borrowing too much money, particularly over the last 6 or 7 years. And for many decades, Congress has actually taken money from Social Security and spent on other things. And so it's important for a lot of seniors to know that's there. You know, unlike Joe Biden, seniors do not have sons that rake in millions of dollars from foreign governments and kick up 10% to the big guy. So we understand that. Well, good. Okay, well, thanks. So we want your support in January for the caucus. If this election is about a candidate like me that's a proven leader, got a proven record, has served this country in uniform, and I'm out there every day holding Joe Biden accountable for his failures and showing the American people that there's a better way, that we can reverse the decline of the country, we're going to win across the board. And it's not just going to be me, because this is a team effort. It's going to be Congress. It's going to be U.S. Senate. It's going to be state legislatures. All these things, I think we can have a historic election. But if the election ends up being about what happened in the past, if it ends up being about, you know, personalities and other things like that, well, then Biden is going to be able to sit in his basement again, not have to justify his record, and I think he's going to get away with it. And I think Republicans are going to lose. So this is our choice to put our best foot forward and do it in a way that the issues in the election that should be front and center should be the issues you care about, that affect you, your family, and our country's future. If we're discussing anything else other than that, then we're just playing into the Democrats' hands, playing into the media's hands, and they would like nothing better than to see Biden be able to waltz in again and continue all the destruction that we've seen. So I will be the guy to be able to get the job done, both in the election and then starting January 20th, 2025, buckle your seatbelts, because we are going to be active, we are going to be very forceful, bold, we're going to lead, and we will reverse the decline of the United States of America. Thank you.